This is Pat Marsh, your host for the PM Talk Show. We would like to thank our fine underwriters for supporting our show.
North Shore Center for Wellness is a behavioral health care practice that offers a myriad of services to children and their families in the Tangipahoa Parish community and surrounding areas. Our mission is to promote the well-being of the individual and families by providing accessible, quality health care. North Shore features quarterly Let's Talk wellness training, community outreach, and education. You can find more on these and other trainings on Facebook. For your convenience, North Shore accepts Magellan Healthcare and is located at 904 West Coleman. North Shore Center for Wellness. It's our goal to enhance the quality of life for our clients.
Parish's Supportive Living offers assistance in your home with everyday living tasks. We offer to the community long-term care, personal care, a community choice waiver, and many other services through the state Medicaid waiver program. Plus, we offer competitive direct service worker salary. You can contact Parishes at 985-662-5347. Medicaid, private pay, and insurance are accepted. EEOC. Parish's Supportive Living is also licensed and insured. Find them on the web at parishessupportiveliving.com.
Hello, this is Pat Marsh, your host for the PM Talk Show. We have been doing a series on Common Core and the PARCC exam, and we have with us today school board member Mrs. Sandra Bailey Simmons. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, thank you.
Great. Everybody is either worried or afraid, not knowing what the outcome will be of the Common Core and PARCC exam. So we wanted you to come on today and give your take on what it is, what's going on, and what your feelings are about both those exams.
Yes, it's caused quite a bit of controversy across the country, not just our own parish, but I've had parents calling me and emailing me, and I see a lot of it on Facebook about their students having to take the PARCC exams. And one of the reasons is, I think besides the fact that it's so stressful, the point being that they not only have to test for about 3 weeks, most of the school year revolves around preparing for the test and teaching the test through the curriculum to be able to accomplish fulfilling the standards of education that the Bessie Board has put down before us. So it's way too much emphasis on testing. It does away to me with the love of teaching and the love of learning. The emphasis is definitely not on the right thing in education.
One of the things that I'm reading about, and that is the Bessie Board is trying to decide whether or not to not penalize kids if they opt out of if the kids and their parents opt out of the test. How do you feel?
Correct. Now, yeah, like the letter that went out in our system was that they would receive a 0 for not taking the test, and they would be counted absent if they stayed home from school, but yet if they went to school, they'd have nowhere to sit because it would be distracting for those that are taking the test. So it's a dilemma there, and I feel like the parents should have the right, if they wanted their child to opt out of the test, I think that should be their right, and I don't think it should be punitive.
Okay, do you know what the Bessie Board has decided, or have they decided anything yet?
It's up in the air. You'll read the paper one day and it's like definitely this is going to happen with the 0 and counted absent, and then you'll read something that maybe later on down the line that's not going to happen, and the scores will not count against our school system, which to me it shouldn't. If they didn't take the test, then they shouldn't be considered in the rank. They shouldn't be considered in the averaging of the scores because they did not actually take the test. It's as though they didn't exist at that point. And that, to me, if they didn't take it, then that should be the way it should go and not hurt the scores of the school.
Right, and I really think if a lot of people opt out, a lot of parents opt out of taking the test, then those 0 scores, if they are counted, will hurt us tremendously, I believe.
Yeah, if there are a lot. We don't know yet how many, but if there are a lot of students that opt out or parents that opt their students out, then yes, it could definitely bring our scores down in the school system. Now, you know, I'm not for doing away with the whole thing right now because that's what the teachers have been building their kids up to, and they've been training them in every respect. But after this semester, to me, when this school year is up, I'm all for opting out of the whole Common Core curriculum. Yeah. And they need to come up with something that is better researched, that is research-based scientifically, and also, too, involves educators in the process. It's obvious that never happened.
Right. And I think that's very important, Mrs. Simmons, because if the teachers themselves don't know how to deal with it, how can we expect them to pass that information on to the kids?
That's exactly right, and I know that it's been very stressful for teachers. Well, we have more teachers that are dropping out, that are either retiring early, or sabbaticals, or resigning because of the stress of all of this.
Right, right. And I think if they would, as I said when I interviewed Dr. Carolou from Southeastern, just simply let the teachers teach what they teach.
That's exactly right, because you know that's the way I came up as a teacher when I was teaching elementary school. It was exciting and it was a love of learning, and I think you could have held our kids up against any kids in the country.
Right.
Maybe not on a standardized test, but subject for subject, I think they could hold their own.
Do you know how the other school districts went about opting out?
They wrote up resolutions. I know that St. Tammany did out of Common Core altogether. The board was probably unanimous, if not close, to opt out of the whole Common Core curriculum. And of course, you know, even our governor, Bobby Jindal, who was for it in the beginning, but has admitted he made a big mistake and that it was not researched enough by him, and he admits that it needed to go. And we have some gubernatorial candidates that are, I think there are 4 right now in the forefront, and all but one of them says they're against Common Core and they don't want it to see happen.
But does it take rocket science to figure this out, that it's not working?
It's not working. I mean, you just interview the teachers, you know, and of course I know that there are some that they're in the groove now and they don't want to rock the boat, and you can't blame them for that. But if everybody could really be honest and lay it all out and say, how much time do you spend drilling, skilling these kids for this test versus just learning for learning's sake?
Right,
How many hours?
right. Probably the whole day.
I'm
Pretty
sure
much.
it is.
Probably
I'm sure it
the whole
is.
day. And it makes the kids tired when they get home. Some are irritable. They don't want to pick up a book because that's all they've looked at all day.
That's right.
All day. When you look at the monies that's going to be made from Common Core, from whoever publishes the books or the group of governors that got together, I'm told it's going to be like in the billions of dollars, and that's not helping
Oh,
our
it's a
kids.
multi-billion-dollar project. In other words, it's all about the money. It's about the money. That's what it costs a fortune to get these tests together and to publish them and all, and big money is being made off of our kids as guinea pigs, scapegoats, if you will, for these tests. It's a big marketing.
One thing I continue to hear is that there wasn't a lot of educational expertise put into the planning of this, and I think that was a huge mistake.
It was. I know many months ago, well, last year, I got some calls from this young man that was with the governor's office and asking me all about what my opinion was. I guess they got my name through the Republican list, I don't know, and I told him over and over, I said, you're making a big mistake because you're not involving educators in this process. You just want my opinion, but when it comes down to putting it all together, you haven't involved educators. I think they had to admit that that was the case, and that's why now the governor is not approving it.
So there's no mandatory statute in place that would really say if you opt out, you're going to get a 0. This is something that Bessie is debating on.
Yeah, that's right. I don't think it's there yet. You know, it's a scare tactic too, probably right now, to keep parents from opting out.
I think in the state of Hawaii, I saw in the news one evening where they began their Park exam and Common Core exam, and all of the students throughout the school just walked out and said they weren't going to do it.
Let me think. Was that New Mexico?
Okay.
It was New Mexico and Albuquerque and all that area. Yes, I heard that last week, that several hundred walked out of the test.
So I wonder what their outcome would be now, having done that.
Hopefully we'll read about that in the news later about what they do about those scores. You know?
Right. One of the things I'm noticing too is that disgruntledness is coming from a cross section of people all over Louisiana and saying enough is enough, this is just too much.
That's right. I think it is. It's all across. And you know, and some of the parents that are against this opting out, they're educators themselves, and they know what they're talking about, but they see the overemphasis on testing and scores and numbers. It's just almost like, you know, the overemphasis on good looks. You know, when you're in high school, if you don't look a certain way or dress a certain way or act a certain way, you're out. Well, it's the same thing with scores. If you don't score real high, that means that you don't have the adequate intelligence, and that is definitely not necessarily the case.
I was reading something from the Family Forum on, excuse me, Common Core and Park, and I don't know if he's a PhD or not, so we'll just say Mr. Gene Mills was telling his story about how he went into his child's school and they had the definition of fact and opinion above the blackboard. But when he looked at the definition, they were synonymous with each other, and they're really not.
No.
So how do
Big
you
difference,
feel
yeah.
about that? It's just
Right. Yeah, I know Gene Mills personally. I've met with him many times, and he's involved in the governor's prayer breakfast, and I've been every year to that. And so, from a Christian perspective, it's Common Core is definitely not where Christians want their kids to be. But as far as the difference between fact and opinion, it'd be questions like, it is wrong to curse in class, it is wrong to cheat on a test, and they're saying that is just somebody else's opinion, that's not a fact. We all know it's a fact. It is wrong to cheat. It is wrong to steal. It
Right.
is wrong to curse other people in your classroom. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. But Common Core says, oh no, that's just one's opinion.
But can you imagine what that will do to the mind of a young child?
Absolutely, because they're so vulnerable in those
Right.
early years, and they're just growing as far as fact and fiction goes, and it's terribly important that the kids are brought up in the right atmosphere and
Exactly.
not believing that something like that is truth when it's not truth.
Right. Well, Mrs. Simmons, this is so interesting, and we're going to take a little break right now, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to the PM Talk Show. This is Pat Marsh, your host, and we're having such an interesting conversation with our guest today, Mrs. Sandra Bailey Simmons, who is a board member of District H for the Tangipahoa Parish School System. Mrs. Simmons, when you were teaching education at Southeastern, what was that experience like, or was it similar to what you see going on?
I'm glad you asked that question. You know, of course, before that, I was an elementary classroom teacher and taught many different grades, and then I became a college teacher at Southeastern. Namely, I was an instructor in the Department of Teacher Ed, which trained pre-service teachers how to teach methods classes. And many of the teachers in the school system today, I've taught them. And when we taught them back then, there was no emphasis whatsoever on drilling kids for taking a test. In fact, we taught them the opposite. You don't drill the skills into kids. You learn it through the love of learning, and it's almost through when you're studying subject matter, you're doing it because it's exciting, and you're bringing various manipulatives and hands-on and project-based learning that they'll remember what they learned because of that, not because I better memorize this because I got to pass it on a test. That never came up. Right. It is so tragic now when I go in the classroom and see how it is now, and the stress level versus the excitement of teaching back when I was teaching at Southeastern.
Mm-hmm. Well, the thing is, I can relate to that too. that when we were in school, it wasn't a test that was taught, it was the actual concept of how you get to that answer. And we would more readily remember how to do that, as opposed to, well, if I'm taught from a test and they give me a question on the actual test, it's different or it's rearranged,
I'm
then
glad you
that's
brought
going to
that
be
up. Hey,
confusing.
that's called criterion reference test.
Right.
That I'm very much for. In other words, it's the test on the subject that they just learned. And they learned it through various methods in the classroom that we taught them at Southeastern. And most of them had no problems at all passing those kinds of tests. But those were tests of materials that they learned in that classroom for that particular grade. And they didn't have to worry about, am I going to score as well as somebody in Chicago?
Right.
You know, or somebody my age somewhere else. It was all about, do I know the material that my teacher taught me today or yesterday in this classroom?
Well, then you have an ethical issue, because in some places, I'm not saying it's being done here, but to get to the numbers that they need, you may have a situation where teachers are actually taking the test for the kids and changing the grades, but that's not helping the kid. That's hurting the child farther down the road.
That's
it's gonna
right,
hurt them.
and we know probably across the country we've had situations like that, because the teachers are so stressed out to make those scores happen, because you see, that's how they evaluate the teachers.
Right.
Not whether or not they're really good teachers. Most of the percentage of their evaluation is based on, did the child score high on the test? Isn't that tragic? I mean, you might have a child that just can't take tests, or a dyslexic child, ADD child who didn't take his medication that day, or a child that didn't have enough to eat, or a child that nobody works with at home. And how they score is going to be the evaluation of the teacher. That is definitely not the way it should be.
No, and what is your answer for all of this?
My answer for all of this is for our country to get a grip on what really education is really about. Right. And it's almost going back to old school, you know, back in those days, the Little Red Schoolhouse days, where the focus was on subject matter and the joy of teaching and the excitement of learning through various methods, and not have to worry about, did I get all the skills in or not. You got the skills in. It came naturally.
Right. One thing I want to ask you, the Louisiana Family Forum, from the one that I've received, and I have not been to it, but I intend to go to it, and if you're interested in reading what Mr. Mills has to say, you can Google him or go to his email address at www.lafamilyforum.org. That's www.lafamilyforum.org. And what I've read is very interesting, because he defines, say, the true meaning of fact, the true meaning of opinion, which brings me to my next question for you. You led a charge on a textbook that was being given out in the school, and you got all of that changed.
Oh, absolutely. There's more than one textbook, and right now I can't pull up the name, but there were several textbooks that came out of the Common Core curriculum that was supplemental reading, and the parents called me, and then they met with me more than on one occasion, and that material was not just questionable, it should never have entered into those classrooms, and those kids had, somebody would say, well, they should have known before they got it. There's no way to know that that's in it. It looks real innocent on the cover and in the title. And then, but when we took it to Mr. Coway, he agreed immediately and pulled those books. Or if you called the principal and they saw it, they would remove them. And you're thinking, well, how did they ever get there? Well, that's easy. There are hundreds and hundreds of books that came in with Common Core, and it would be hard for any teacher to sit back and read every one of those books. So really, the parents have to be a watchdog and call your board member or your central office and report these kinds of books. Our kids should not be subjected to this kind of reading.
One thing I know, the newspaper is saying that Bessie is doing it right now. Before they make a decision, they're monitoring the numbers on how many people are opting out of Common Core and Park. And once they see that, then they will make a decision as far as the penalties are concerned. Is that right?
That's what I've read, and of course I haven't heard that officially, but I have read that. I've heard that on the news, and you know, sometimes I'd like to look and see too how many people on Bessie board are educators themselves. And I never have taken time to research that, but that'd be something interesting to find out.
Well, I think we can all come to this consensus that if teachers don't understand it, then it's going to be impossible for them to get the kids to understand
And
it.
now that you brought that up, we just had a Louisiana School Board conference in Shreveport, and we take a little test every time. They test the school board members on various facts. And anyway, the first 3 questions, nobody at my table knew the answer. We tried to figure it out and tried, and so the one presented it didn't know the answers himself, and he says, let me tell you, I've tried to come up with these answers. These are Common Core questions, math questions. He said we could not figure out the answers, and mostly because the way the question is posed, you don't know what they're really asking. That's ridiculous. That's just testing to see if you're a good test taker. Who cares? We want to know, what do you know? What have you learned?
Think critically.
Yeah, or think critical. Well, there's many ways to evaluate critical level thinking, higher level thinking, and that's very important in a curriculum. But to trick people, to let it be all about tricking you, and to trick the test and all, that's not learning.
Yeah. And then I also remember at a committee meeting where a parent from Laranja, grandparent as a matter of fact, he was very upset, and rightly so, because his grandchild was so stressed out, the mother was so stressed out, he was so stressed out, and nobody could really give him an answer.
Yeah, and this is a grandparent that helped his child with homework every night.
Right.
And so it wasn't somebody that a fly-by-night or somebody that didn't care what the kid did at night. And my own son has said the very same thing at night. The homework is laid out on the tables for hours that they have to do to be able to accomplish the Common Core homework requirements.
Right. Well, we have a lot to look forward to seeing or not seeing when all of this is over, but my prayer is that we as a school system will come to the realization that this is going to hurt us more than it's going to help us.
Absolutely, that's
It's going
right.
to do it. So if we can join so many others who have opted out of this, then I think it would be to our advantage, and simply put, just let the teachers teach.
That's right, and I think the teachers would love to have that happen.
Right.
Just let them teach. Remove all the extra stress from getting ready for a test that does not really measure whether or not they learned anything in that classroom this semester.
Mm-hmm. Well, other than Common Core and Park that we're all nervous about, is there anything else that you'd like to discuss?
Well, I do want to say this, just from visiting the schools like Westside and Hammond last week, I think it was, I was invited to the Black History program.
Okay.
And my grandson was there for several years, and I'm not just bragging on one school. I've been to others too, but this particular program was the most amazing program. These students got up and did recitations, several of them, with no notes, no, what do they call the screen in front of
prompt.
you? Your prompts. Nobody prompted them. They did amazing jobs in their speeches. Then they had different dance groups that were the choreography was amazing, that they learned all together and singing. And then what was really something, the gym was filled and the kids were sitting on the floor because it's too small of an area to put chairs in, and they were sitting Indian style, cross-legged.
Yeah.
They didn't move. It was amazing. I guess we were there an hour and a half or something like that. Yeah. And so we're going to be bringing some of them to the school board meeting next month so they can perform and show off what they were doing.
Okay, that's
and
a great
that's
idea.
what school's all about to me, to watch it. And the principals were so proud of their students.
And the kids will remember that, because I can remember the dance, the Blue Danube, when I was in elementary school. Remember the little pink dresses and the blue bows and ribbons and all that.
Yeah,
but kids have a tendency to remember those positive things that they do in school. Let me publicly thank you for coming to Coach Foster's salute. That really meant a lot to him, to the community, just to see you there, and it was such a nice program, and we certainly enjoyed Reverend Attorney Taylor's speech that he gave. It was just a well-rounded good service, so thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a very, very special night, and I was really proud of Alden. He did a beautiful job with his speech, and his little family was there. The music was great. The attendance was wonderful. Great spirit. It was just a great spirit in that room, and we will miss him. It really was.
So thank you for coming, and we thank you for coming to be our guest today, and we want to just continue to keep this before the public with Common Core and Park and where we are with it, and hopefully the system will do what a lot of other, I think it's 13 or 15 school
15
systems.
school
Yeah.
districts have opted out.
Right, right, and I think that was a smart thing to do. All the time, it's not about the dollar.
That's right. It's
It's
not
about
about
these
the dollar.
kids' education.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
So we want to remind you again that knowledge is powerful. It does matter. Thank you for joining us again. Hope you will continue to do so. God bless. Have a great week.